For more than a decade, this station has been producing a program dedicated to furthering understanding of Native tribes and cultures. Native Report is a magazine-style program that travels the region and the nation, bringing back stories of our Native heritage. Recently, we sat down with Native Report's producer and its founder to talk about the impact the program has had.
The feeling was to promote understanding and respect, and I think I left the program in 2015, but Mike has done a terrific job of keeping up that tradition of educating the public and promoting understanding of Native people.
Mm-hmm. So Michael, you're the current producer. What goes through your mind as you try to put a program together? What are some of the goals that you have and things that you want to accomplish?
Well, my first thought is to make it entertaining, of course, because it is television. Visuals really help television, of course. So if a story is visual, that is going to be, I think, the deciding factor. There are other factors involved also, how important the topic might be. When we talk with policymakers, oftentimes they're legislators, might be a tribal leader. We try to get as much of the facts as possible. But getting back to the visuals, like for the upcoming season, we're doing a segment, or maybe a couple of segments, on the making of a wigwam, which is a strict traditional structure in at least the Ojibwe culture. And there's a call for that from one of the citizen advisory boards. Why don't you do this? We've never seen this. And so I reached out into the community, close community of Fond du Lac. Gentleman called me back and said, hey, let's do this. Mm-hmm. So the first thing, of course, is to make it entertaining as possible, informative, but ultimately, to talk about issues in a clear and manner.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a look at some of the favorite moments of yours from the program that you'd like to share with people.
Of all the bills you worked on over all those years, what ones stand out the most?
Well, I think the one that stands out the most, because perhaps it will have the longest legacy, is the establishment of the National Museum of the American Indian. We developed legislation to authorize the establishment of the museum. That was enacted into law in November of 1989. And in September of 2004, the museum opened. There were thousands of people, I'm sure you were amongst them, of Native people from North, Central, and South America that came to the National Mall. And I always get choked up when I talk about this, but because thousands of people dressed in their Native dress walked toward the Capitol to reclaim their proper place in history.
Roger was my buddy. He would get me up there for Indian dances. He gave me a headdress, but we would talk serious policy, and he'd come out to Washington, and I would see him there, or I would see him in Minneapolis, or I'd see him up in Red Lake. Whenever he came to Washington, he always had a place in the White House with me. And I remember he brought some high school kids from Red Lake and they wanted to dance somewhere. So we set up a platform out on the White House lawn there, and the president came out with me and we watched them dance.
When we say Anishinaabe, that means a human being. And we're part of a human family. That means all of the humans living on this earth. We're all connected. We're all connected to creation, and we're all connected to each other. So this is for everybody. We have culture, we have a way of life. Bimatiziwin, the good life. And so this is part of that Bimatasawin, to understand that we have to honor sacred places and sacred things. And if we continue doing that, honoring those things and honoring all creation, that we will have a good life.
Now, Mike, Native Report is the only show that we have that's syndicated, and it's seen in many markets across the country. Talk about some of the travel that's required and some of the connections that you need to make so that the program is relevant not just to the Native communities here, but across the country?
You know, that's a big challenge. It started out originally, of course, you know, very centric with the focus in the area here. But we travel at least a couple of times a year, and usually in conjunction with like a major conference. The one that we usually go to is called the National Congress of American Indians. And when we go into, like last year, it was in Denver, but we are able to go out into the communities also, you know, the Native communities that are in close proximity to the conference that we're at. And that's how we're able to get other stories from other reservations, other tribal nations. You know, there's a lot of a policy that affects all of Native America, and not just one tribe specifically, but there's a lot of legislation that affects that. So we try to put a national take on a lot of what we do. We try to feature as many tribal nations as possible. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's a real honor that I'm able to do this, to listen to the stories and talk with the individuals.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tad, you talked about some of your goals going into production. What do you think the impact of Native Report has been over the years?
I think it's kind of accomplished and is still accomplishing what we wanted to do, which was to show Indian people living their lives as everything from mathematicians and musicians and TV broadcasters and actors, actresses, sports figures. And I think we wanted to show Minnesota and surrounding regions, and now I think it's on in 28 states, Mike?
Correct.
That these are nice folks. These are just plain folks. And I know growing up in Minnesota, these are good people. I felt like if they could see us just, you know, what we do day to day, and understand that these are tribal governments, these are folks with traditions and culture, but we have a lot in common, and that's what we wanted to drive home.
All right, Tad Johnson, Michael LeGarde, we're out of time, but thank you and congratulations on really creating something that's very impactful and very special.